$1.28 maybe per hour, or high availability concentrates on failures that are shorter in duration. The availability of data must be optimum or maybe high. Both the things are valid. What does the cloud governance will do is regulation of new service creation. Cloud service again is a business. Business is all about getting the profit. Hello students, welcome to the next session of Cloud Computing and Big Data Analytics. I am Dr. Soumeshri from Department of Computer Science, Vidyashram College. Let's get into the session. In this session, I am going to explain about the cloud governance and what are the benefits and how to recover from a disaster in a cloud service. Let's get into the concept. The first thing we need to know about is the cloud governance. So the cloud governance is all about distributing the roles and the responsibilities to the employees or some role players who take the responsibility of each service that is going to be given to the stakeholders or customers in a cloud environment. All right. The cloud governance is broken down into following categories. Like, first thing, what does the cloud governance will do is regulation of new service creation. Whenever there is a requirement for the new service by the stakeholder or the customer of the cloud, we have to regulate how does the service must be provided. Apart from that, if the service is not there at current in the cloud, first what we have to do is we have to plan for and install the software or install the service before it is provided or before it is rendered to the stakeholder, isn't it? The regulations must be done for the new service creation. How you are going to regulate the service? Like, you have to install it, you have to manage it, you have to decide what is the cost of that service based on the subscription. How much the stakeholder is going to subscribe, how many days, how many times, and how much it has to be paid, whether it is based on pay-per-use or continuous subscription or what. It has to be done. All these things will come under the terminology regulation. That is, regulating a particular service so that the stakeholder can use the service without any hindrance or without any problem. Okay, that is the one thing the cloud governance is going to concentrate. The next thing is getting more use of the services. Some service, there may be several services in the cloud computing. One thing is, we are not going to use every service with a equal proportion. Like, some infrastructure may be used more than else. Like, suppose if we have a printer and a scanner, we may use more resource or more concentration on printer. Printer may be used more times than the scanner. Scanner may be used only 10 times per month and printer may be used 100 times per month. Now, there is an imbalance between the service, isn't it? One service is underutilized and another service is overutilized. Now, what is the role of the cloud governance in this task is, it has to optimize the use of the services. If some service is not used more times or it is underutilized, we have to make or we have to take the measures to increase the use of that service, like getting more customers or creating more copies and assigning it to other stakeholders or new stakeholders. We have to take care of all those things. We don't want that one service will be utilized, overutilized and some other service underutilized. There must be a balance in the service in a cloud, is it not? That is the responsibility of the cloud governance. Okay. The next thing is enforcing standards and best practices. We have the standard, we have to set the standard about the service that must be provided to the stakeholder. You cannot use the service as it is, it has been installed in the cloud. There must be a standard how that service is going to serve the stakeholder, is it not? Then best practices. There will be best practices like attending the troubleshooting of the stakeholder as early as possible. It makes a good impression on the stakeholder that this cloud service is better than others, isn't it? In a service-oriented industry, we need to concentrate on better quality of service, and there will be some best practices. Suppose if a network breakdowns or if the service is not available for stakeholder, in such a case we have to regret the service breakage. Service is not available, please wait some time. Or if the stakeholder contacts the cloud administrator, he has to try, he used to try or he needs to try to solve that problem. He has to come up with newer solutions. There must be smooth interaction between the stakeholder and the cloud administrator, and there must be a balance of the service given and taken by the stakeholder and the service provider, isn't it? These are the some of the best practices we can do. As a cloud service provider, we have to perform or we have to follow certain best practices which gives you a quality of service. Okay, that is again the responsibility, or that is what has been done by the cloud governance. Governance is nothing but controlling and managing the entire cloud service, isn't it? Governance, from the term governance comes the term government, isn't it? Governance is to control or to administer the entire process or the operation, right? The next thing is, it has to manage, the cloud governance must manage the service change management. How does the service change management is going to be managed? Is by regulating the services provided. There must be a management if any service is changed. Okay, service change management. If there is any discrepancy, any problem happening in the current service, or we are going to change it, we are going to update it, the stakeholder must not know that the service is getting updated. He must get the service without any break. He must get a continuous service from that particular cloud service, even though it is getting upgraded or has been changed or it is getting updated. You have to manage the service change. Along with that, you have to control the service version. What type of service is needed by the stakeholder? Which version? There will be different versions of services. Like if you take SaaS, software as a service, there will be different versions of the same software. For some application, you need older versions of the service, and for some projects or some task, you need the newer versions of the software. You have to control what version of service has been given to the stakeholder or to the customer, isn't it? So all these comes under the task of cloud governance. In cloud governance, we have two parts, that is, one is governance, that is monitoring or administering. Another one is compliance, that is integrating with other services. In compliance, we have the intellectual property rights. You should not violate the intellectual property rights, because if you are acting as a third party between an actual service and the stakeholder, suppose if you take the Adobe Reader or Writer. It will be a service provided by the Adobe, but I am a third party, cloud acting as a third party to the stakeholder, because stakeholder is getting access to my cloud, but in turn I don't have that software, but I'm getting that software from Adobe company. Now you have to take care of what are the intellectual property rights of the Adobe. What does rights they have? Intellectual property rights they have. I should not violate those intellectual property rights of the Adobe, and I must provide a better service. At the same time, I must provide a better service to the stakeholder, right? Next we have regulating the data. In the compliance part, it also part of cloud governance. You have to regulate the data. That means you have to divide it into particular format. You have to regulate the incoming data to the cloud. Then you have to decide the service level. How much levels must be there? What kind of service must be given to which level of management in an enterprise if it is a private cloud. Next thing is reversibility, the ability of reversing the task, reversing the service. Next is identity federation. You have to ensure the identity of the authorized person. Then interoperability. If you are moving a service from one cloud to another cloud, you must make that service interoperable. That means it must be operated in new cloud as well as in the old cloud. Alright. In governance, we have the responsibility of cost benefit analysis. Why do we need cost benefit analysis? Is cloud service again is a business. Business is all about getting the profit, isn't it? If you don't have the profit, no need of running the business. You can't run the business without a proper benefit, isn't it? You have to calculate the cost and the benefit that has to be generated by rendering a service to the stakeholder. If this much cost is fixed for this service, how much benefit or profit I get from this service. So all these calculations must be done in the cloud governance. Along with that, auditing of the services, monitoring of the services, standards, template, process and policies. All these things must be fixed by the cloud governance only. Next, performance indicators. You will be having meters to judge the performance of a particular service. How it is giving the service, whether it is vulnerable to the attacks, what is the level of performance of a particular service. All these things must be measured using the performance indicators. Next is security policy. This is the main thing in cloud computing, because along with all these processes and services, we need the security for our data. Without a proper security, no one will be ready to invest money in your cloud service. I'm right? The security policy must be strong enough to ensure that the data that is passing through the cloud is at most secured, and there is a little bit chance of somebody else getting access to your data. Who are all going to do that? Who is going to do that is the task of the cloud governance. This is how cloud governance is going to manage the service part of the cloud computing. All right. Next thing is, the term we need to concentrate is high availability and disaster recovery. As we know, high availability is related to how does the service is available to the stakeholder in the case of the disasters. Even though there is a problem there is a disaster, you need to continue to give the service to the stakeholder. How do you are going to make this possible? That is high availability. And disaster recovery. If there is any disaster that happens in the cloud, how do you recover your cloud from that particular disaster? Disaster, you know about that? Maybe natural, maybe intentional, isn't it? Natural is natural calamities. Intentional is attacks, virus attack, worms, Trojan horses getting into the cloud, isn't it? Network problem, network breakdown, all these comes under the disaster. How does your cloud is going to recover from the disaster is another part, isn't it? So the high availability and disaster recovery are important factors needed for deployment of a cloud. Why do you need that? Is we have to measure the high availability and the disaster recovery. Today, everything is becoming data oriented, isn't it? Wherever you go, which is important? Data is important. Everything is stored as data. The data must be available for the authorized stakeholder at any time and any place. If you want to achieve that task, you need to make high availability of the data. That is one thing. Another thing is disaster recovery. You can't ensure that you will give 100% service to the stakeholder because everything will not be in our control, isn't it? Environment or other external factors will not be in our control. We have to take care or we have to take the measures to recover from the disaster that can happen over a service as soon as possible. You cannot say that the disaster has happened, I can't give you the service. You cannot deny the service, isn't it? So it has to be taken care by the cloud governance. Another difference of high availability and disaster recovery is high availability concentrates on failures that are shorter in duration, like system failures, network failures, service breakdown. All these things or all these problems will be answered by high availability. It concentrates on short-term failures, whereas and relocating of the people, it will not be handled by the high availability factor. It is going to handle the short-term failures, whereas the disaster recovery or DR concentrates on long-term failures like natural calamities, moving of the locations, that is cloud service or servers are moved from one location to another location. At that time, the longer duration will be taken to resume the service, or relocating the people or relocating the administrators. If somebody is going to relocate from one location to another location, all these failures will be long-term failures. You cannot recover from it within chunks of time, within minutes or within hours. It may take number of days or number of hours or number of months. May not be month, it will be number of days. So this is called as the long-term failure. If it is only few minutes, it is a short-term duration or short-term problem. But if it is long-term problem or long-term failures, it will be handled by the disaster recovery management, or it is going to do all these things. In relation to high availability and disaster recovery, we have some terminologies which are used to define the high availability and the disaster recovery. Few such terminologies are mean time between failures, mean time to recover, high availability, continuous operations, continuous availability, availability management. So what is the meaning of these terminologies is mean time between failures is the average time that are taken by the cloud service to be mean time between the starting of the failure and resuming of the service. If it is 10 seconds or 10 microseconds, it is the mean time between the failures, or mean time between failures can be defined as the average time between successive failures. What is the mean time of the successive failures? If the particular service has a short-term failure of 10, what is the average time between successive failures, which is called as the mean time between the failures. The next thing is the mean time to recover. It is reverse of the mean time between failures. This is the mean time or average time required to recover from the successive failures. How much time has been taken to recover from the failure? That is called as the, or to recover, which is called as the mean time to recover. Next is, so high availability means it is a characteristic of a service which makes the service how much percentage the data or service has been available to the user. The maximum percentage that can happen in the high availability is 99%, because it cannot be 100%. You cannot ensure that I'll provide 100% of service to the stakeholder. It will be maximum of 90%. How much time the data is available to the stakeholder? That is acceptable amount of service available, or agreed upon high level of service to end users during scheduled time. If the service is subscribed for 1 month, what was the percentage of service provided to the customer within that 1 month? Say I have subscribed a service for 30 days. I have subscribed a service for 30 days. In that 30 days, we had a failure of the service for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, total of 20 minutes in entire 30 days, or total of or average of 10 minutes in the entire service of 30 days. So, you can calculate the high availability of the service in this case to be 99.5%. That means only few minutes there is a failure of the service. So, high availability gives you the percentage or characteristic or meter of the service that it was available in the regulated time when the service is accessed. That is called as the high availability. Next is continuous operation. So, continuous operation is the characteristic of the system that allows an end user to use the service on continuous duration, like 24/7/365. The entire year, for each and every time, if the service is available, then it can be termed as continuous operation. You can count the service percentage with continuous operation, or if there is any breakage. If there is more breakage in the service, the percentage of continuous operation will be less, isn't it? The next thing is continuous availability. So, it is again the characteristic of the service system. How much percentage the service is available to the stakeholder even in case of disasters or even in case of problems. How much percentage the service is available, continuous availability of the service to the stakeholder. That will be calculated in continuous availability. Next thing is availability management, the process of managing the IT resources. How do you manage the IT resources that has been given to the end user or to the stakeholder will be managed in the cloud, which comes under the term of high availability. Okay, so this is about some of the terminologies that are used in the high availability as well as disaster recovery. Apart from that, the disaster recovery can be termed as the process of creating. You are creating along with verifying and maintaining an IT continuity plan. There will be a plan which must be there to be executed, which helps in restoring of a service in the case of a disaster. You cannot tell that I'm not giving you the service in case of disaster. There is a tornado, there is a hurricane happening. You can observe in the news that most of the South American or in United States, most of the South American regions, most of the times gets affected with hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, all these things. But if there is any service obtained in that location, or if any server is located in that area, that in the shores of the or in the ocean of the South American region, if there are tornadoes, hurricanes happening in that area, we cannot deny the service that the environment or weather is not suitable here. Servers are getting damaged because of this disaster. We cannot provide you service. I cannot say like that because rest of the world is operating and are expecting the continuation of the service by the cloud, isn't it? So you have to give the process of creating, verifying and maintaining the continuity of the service in spite of the disaster, whatever may be the kind of disaster. You need to have a continuity plan to provide the service to the stakeholder. Okay. Along with that, what does the disaster recovery plan includes? This plan includes the procedures. What kind of procedures will it have is, it will ensure the optimum availability. The thing is, high availability is integrated with disaster recovery, isn't it? So, the availability of data must be optimum or maybe high. Both the things are valid. Optimum availability of the critical business functions. The services that are needed to run a business must be first restored or given premium importance or prime importance to recover in case of the disasters. Okay. And protection of vital records is also plays an utmost importance in case of the disasters, isn't it? Even though there is a flood to the server, the entire server has been break down, but you have to keep the backup of the entire data and you have to protect the vital records of an enterprise. Otherwise, you have to pay for the mistake you have done because you have promised the stakeholder that you will provide the service in spite of the disasters and the failures. So, you have to take the measures to recover from those failures. Alright. Apart from that, the true business need. Why does the business needs high availability is including the rapid recovery for disaster situation. Even if there is a disaster, you can recover certain part of the data. You cannot recover the entire data. If there is an hurricane happened, there was a tsunami and the entire server has sunk in the ocean and is not available. In that situation, you can recover certain parts of the data. The server has been damaged and part of the data has gone. In such a case, you have to recover the data. You have to take the measures for rapid recovery of the data and the records in the instances of a disaster. You must determine what are the measures you can take to recover those data, and you must take back or get back all the available data within very less time. All right. Along with that, the availability strategy, if you have an availability strategy, you can guide the organization. If you have a strategy to recover from the disaster or recover from a problem, you can guide the organization in implementing the high availability of the data. You have to be available, the data must be available all the time to the stakeholder, and you have to rapidly recover from a disaster. That is in your hand to recover from the disaster. As you know, some of the disasters are expected or has been happened in the near future, has happened in previous, like hurricanes. They are not the events that haven't happened in the past. It has happened several times. There are so many hurricanes, tornadoes has occurred in our area. That means I know about the situation that can happen. What happens if the hurricane has come to our area? I know about that. What happens if the hurricane comes? So I must be ready to take the setback measures or to take the recovery measures in case of the predetermined or pre-existing disasters. Some will be disaster that happens instantly, which has not happened. This is the first time it is happening, like tsunami. It won't happen each and every day or each and every year, isn't it? It is an unprecedented situation where those kind of situation will not happen regularly. I don't know about how to recover the data from that disaster because it is not a usually happening situation. In that case, I can take little more time to recover the data. But the predetermined disasters, pre-known disasters must be handled more efficiently because we know the management of disaster with the previous incidents. In such a case, we have to take care of the data before the incident sets in. Before the hurricane comes to my area, I have to ensure that the records and data have been backed up and is secure in somewhere else. Server of somewhere else. It is secure because I know hurricane has came to our area before 6 months or before 1 year. So I know what must be done and I have taken all the measures. That will be a chance of high availability. And again, disaster recovery. All these things can be efficiently made with certain disaster recovery plans. All right. The next thing we need to concentrate is charging models, usage reporting, billing, and metering. The previous concepts are all about how to give the service, how to measure the performance, how to increase the performance, how to recover from a disaster. All those things we have discussed. The main thing we need to discuss is we are providing these many services. How do you charge? Because you need money to run this business. How do you charge the stakeholders? What is the meter or parameters you have to take care while charging for a service? That comes under the charging models. For charging models, you need usage reporting. How much service have been used by what kind of stakeholders? How many days or for how many duration the service has been utilized? What was the quality of the service? All these reporting is needed for the charging models. For that using the charging models, we can give the billing. We can prepare the billing procedures or process along with the metering. You have to use the meters to generate a bill. So metering will be implemented in one of the charging model. In turn, charging model depends on the usage reporting in a cloud service. Okay. So the charging models are approaches that are taken care or that are considered to recover the expenses. We'll be having expenses to run a cloud service. We have to recover the expense along with certain profit percentage. Now we have to calculate how much should be charged to stakeholder based on the service obtained by the stakeholder. Okay, so we have the type of service models or charging models like standard extra small, standard small, that is how much data or memory space have been utilized. Uses 1 GB, standard small uses 2 GB, standard medium uses 4 GB, standard large service uses 8 GB, standard extra large service uses 16 GB, and we have the service double extra large which uses 32 GB of the memory space from the cloud. Along with that, what are the virtual cores or services that are obtained in different level of instance of service. Then we have how much local disk memory can be used along with these services and what is the price in terms of dollars. How much you have to pay if you have accessed standard double extra large memory space or service from the cloud is $1.28 maybe per hour or per minute, like that. You have to charge price per hour. How much you have to pay if you have accessed this much memory space. If you have accessed 32 GB memory space or service from the cloud, you have to pay $1.28 per hour. Okay. So this is one kind of charging model. What are the challenges that are faced by the charging models is, one thing is many organizations do not implement sophisticated internal chargeback mechanism. Chargeback is nothing but charging. Chargeback is, I have provided the service, I have to charge for the service, which is called as the chargeback. Okay. Due to the complexity, because there will be a mismatch between the metering of the stakeholder and the service provider. If that doesn't match, there will be a complexity of how to charge this particular service. Okay. So they will not implement sophisticated mechanism to charge back the service. Along with that, you must be able to determine all the metrics. You must be able to determine the metrics that are used to charge back and be able to break them into different users. You have to break down for the users. Users is nothing but the system that is using a particular service. If there is a PHP provider or if there is a Visual Studio software that has been accessed by you, you have to break down the service that has obtained by an individual system. If a service is obtained for a group of developers, one software has been obtained by group of developers where developers have 5 team members. In 5 team members, we have the T1, T2, T3, T4 and T5. So sometimes T1 may have used that particular service for 10 hours, whereas T4 may have used the same service for 25 hours. Now, the general policy of chargeback is you will divide the entire expense between the number of users. But it will be an imbalance because T1 has used only for 10 hours and T4 has used for 25 hours. So, you will take the average of this 25 plus 10, 35 hours multiplied by number of hours. Suppose they have taken $1.28 into 35 hours. So, you will get a result, okay, say $37. So, this $37 will be divided between these two users, which takes a dollar of 18.5 dollars between two users. But this will be an injustice to the user or team member T1 because for using 10 hours, how much he has to pay is 1.2 into 10, that is $12. If he pays $12, it is enough because he has used the service only for 10 hours. How much he has to pay is around $12 or $12.8. But how much he has to pay? If you take the average of this is he has to pay $18. It will be a loss for him, whereas T4 gets benefited by this because if it is 25 hours, $1.28 into 25 will cost definitely more than 18.5, isn't it? So 1.28 into 25 will give you the charge of $32. But how much the T4 is paying is only $18.5, isn't it? This is an injustice that is going to happen. So what are the challenges is you have to determine the charge using all the metrics. You have to use the metrics so that the user gets fair amount of distribution between the chargeback. Okay. You have to keep track of what organizations the users are in, what kind of organization it is using and how much has been used. All these things must be measured and metrics must be used so that every user gets a fair distribution of the price among themselves. So these are the challenges that are to be faced by the chargeback models, and the benefit of the chargeback models is charging models build the transparency. There will be a transparency for the enterprise cost. If it is enterprise costing in whole or enterprise is paying in whole, it will get the transparency. How many users have used, how much services and how many times they have used this. What is the time duration of the service, and help companies to figure out increase of resources and weed out waste, because if they have taken provisioning thing, there is group of service that is provided. In that group, some services may have used more times, more percentage has been used, or most of the services, say if you have 25 services, in that only 15 services may be used for optimum, but remaining 10 services may have used only few times. So you don't need to pay for these 10 services. You can save the cost by getting out of these 10 services. You can be cost only for 15 services from the next subscription. So the benefit of charging models is you can get a transparency in the services obtained from a cloud, which helps in getting the fair share for the individual users. All right. In the next session, I am going to explain about the different charging models and the requirements needed for getting a basic charging model. All right. Thank you.